Hello, everyone. This presentation covers your partner group project in developing and writing a grant to fund a community-based project. So I'm going to actually start at the end and tell you what I want the final product to be, and then we'll back up from there and break down all the assignments that are going to lead up to this final project. So at the end of the semester, your final assignment with your partner is going to be a grant. You guys will work together to write a grant that's going to fund a community-based strategy that's going to address a priority issue area. So within this, you have a couple of upcoming assignments, and each of these assignments are geared towards preparing you to write that grant. So the first one that's going to be coming up in week 9 is a worksheet that you're going to do with your partner called the Priorities and Intervention Plan worksheet. This worksheet becomes kind of the bones, sort of the basic concept from which then you will write a grant. Uh, After you do the worksheet, you're going to take a look at the funding proposal guidelines, and I'll do another presentation at that time, kind of showing you how to review a funding proposal. And you're going to develop an outline of your own grant that you will then use to write it. After that, I set a possible peer review. So we have built into this course that you would trade your outline with another partner group, although around that time, you guys are all going to be pretty busy and pretty focused on your project. So keep an eye out for my announcements. I may decide to cancel that peer review in order to give you and your partner a little bit more time working on your own outline and your final proposal. Then you'll submit your final funding proposal in week 13. And then together with your partner, and this is something to be thinking about now, you both are going to put together an oral presentation of your funding proposal. This is actually something that funders will sometimes require, that you do a 2 to 3 minute pitch of your funding concept. So you'll be doing that in this class as well. So that's the brief overview. Let's break down some of those tasks a little bit more. So as I said, I want you to write a grant by the end of this class. But in order to get there, we have to do a little bit of simulation and a little bit of pretend work because it's not actually possible to go through a whole process of assessing a community need, determining priorities, and writing a grant within a 10-week period. So we're going to do a little simulation in this class, a little bit of pretending, and yes, you will be making up some things in your funding proposal because you won't have all the true information necessary. And that's okay because what I really want you to do in this class is go through the process of writing a grant so you have a good sense of what it actually takes by the time that you graduate. So the first part of our simulation is that we are pretending that as a group, we are conducting or have conducted a comprehensive needs assessment. So you did a community profile in this class, which we talked a lot about in terms of that's a very quick snapshot. It's informative, but it's not in depth. So we are pretending in this class right now that we have conducted an in-depth assessment. So to do so, we're actually going to use a real community assessment that was done that was quite extensive. So you're going to be using this 2018-2020 Washoe County Community Health Needs Assessment as the basis of your idea for your own community-based strategy. Just a side note, this photo that you see on the screen right now, it's a picture of the Sierra Nevada mountains that's really close to where I live. So there's a little bit of my home for you. So within that comprehensive assessment, again, we are pretending that we are part of this group that conducted this assessment. And you can see on their content page, they really did a lot of analysis from the socioeconomic factors in the community to information on housing and food and substance abuse, mental health, maternal and child health, chronic diseases, mortality. So it was an in-depth analysis of a lot of health indicators within the community. Now, as part of our simulation, and what this group really did do was they took all that information and they realized, okay, this indicates a lot of need, but as a community-based group, we can't address all of those needs all at once. Of course, that's our dream, but it's just not possible with limited funding and limited resources. So, as a community group, what you have to do is determine some priorities. What is the highest need? What's the most critical need that we must address as a community first in order to start improving the health and well being? So, in this plan that you will read as part of this task, they did kind of first, they narrowed down. You can see at the top of the screen that they looked at 12 items initially. Then they sort of narrowed that list of 12 items down to 7: housing, healthcare workforce, mental illness, educational attainment, preventative care services, depression, and prescription drug use. It was kind of an initial priority list. And then they narrowed it down even further. If you look at the bottom of the screen, what they determined were the most important, highest areas of need for this community was number 1, housing, number 2, behavioral health, and number 3, nutrition and physical activity. So for this assignment with your partner, you are going to be looking at those 3 areas: housing, behavioral health, nutrition, and physical activity. And with your partner, you both will then narrow that list down even further to something specific that you will work on within housing, behavioral health, or nutrition. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Again, with your partner, one of the next steps, and some of you have already started working on this, is you're going to start working on a worksheet called the Priority and Intervention Plan Worksheet. This worksheet, again, is going to become kind of the bones, the basis. It's almost like your brainstorming sheet for then what you will write for in your final grant assignment. So with the worksheet, and you guys just have to do one per group, and you'll submit it, and then it will show up on my end as a submission for each of you. You're going to take those 3 areas, and again, you're going to narrow it down even further to something that you and your partner want to work on. So you can see in my example here, I said children and youth living in low socioeconomic neighborhoods have unequal access to affordable and nutritious foods. And so you can see from that statement, I went ahead and prioritized this number 3 area, nutrition and physical activity. So I selected nutrition, and then I came up with a statement that supports what I want to do further about that priority area in nutrition. So I said the priority is to equalize access to healthy and affordable foods for children and youth. Currently, 27% of adolescents eat 2 or more servings of vegetables per day. This was actually a statistic included in the needs assessment. So you can pull from that needs assessment to support your priority statement area. And you can see my social justice slant on there when I said the priority is to equalize access. I'm trying to create equity in access to healthy food. So that's the social justice perspective on my priority area. So when you write your statement, I want to see that social justice perspective. Where are you creating equity? Where are you fighting to equalize opportunities for marginalized populations? Then you're going to turn your priority into a goal. You're going to have a long-term goal and a short-term goal. Those short-term goals, if you think about it, what's the immediate thing that's going to happen as a result of your intervention? Okay, it's it's best practice to start with your goals and then work backwards and say, okay, what intervention will lead us to those goals? It's kind of like with your clients. You're going to be talking to their clients about their needs, and you're going to be coming up with some goals for your clients, right? Whether it's to get housing, whether it's to improve their mental health status, you're going to set up some of those goals, and then you back up from there and say, okay, client, what are we going to do in order to help you achieve those goals? It's the same concept at that community-based level. Is we're going to set some goals for the community, and then we're going to back up from there and say, okay, so what intervention is going to help us achieve those goals? So, in this case, my long term goal is that I want to establish some business license and zoning policies that are going to mandate specific food access points within a quarter mile of elementary schools. And so, my theory there is that wherever kids are going to school, they live in that neighborhood, right? For the most part, they're going to live in the neighborhood where they're going to school. So if we can get healthy, quality, affordable food within the vicinity of the schools, then we have a greater chance of hitting our target population of those children. So my goal is that I want to mandate, I want to require within a certain period of time, or within a certain range around elementary schools, I want to require that there be healthy, affordable food options for children and their families. And this actually follows some precedent. For example, I used to work in the area of substance abuse prevention, and we would advocate for and were successful in having cities mandate zoning policies that restrict liquor licenses within a certain radius of schools. And so if we can restrict certain types of businesses being within a range of a school, can we also at the same time require that certain kinds of businesses reside in those areas? And from there, you can look at, there can be some tax incentives that can be offered to business establishments, food establishments, for meeting that requirement. So, in exchange for some kind of tax relief, then a business agrees to offer affordable, healthy food. So, that's my long term goal. In order to get to that goal, I have to first get some buy in from my city council members. I have to make sure that they value this need, and that they're going to get on board with this idea, because they're the ones that are going to implement those business license and zoning policies. So my short-term goal is that I want to change the hearts and minds of my local city council members, so that then they'll want to and start to sponsor those those zoning policies. So the next thing you want to do is double check, are your goals SMART? And some of you probably have learned about SMART goals, but it's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So when we look at my goals, we want to double check to see if they're SMART. So when I look at my top long-term goal, is it specific? Well, yeah, I'm talking about business licenses and zoning policies. Is it measurable? Yep, I either the policies are passed or they're not, or I can measure to what extent I have policies that are passed. Have they been developed and proposed? Have they been voted on? How many of these kinds of policies have been voted on or passed? So that it's measurable. Is it attainable? Yep, this has been done before, so it's possible to get this done. Realistic. Yep, again, it's possible to get this done. And time oriented. And that's where I say, oops, my long-term goal doesn't have any kind of time orientation on it. I didn't say when I wanted this process to either start or when I wanted to see some of these policies passed. So a way to, edit or strengthen my goal would be to add some kind of time orientation on that long-term goal. And then if we look at my short-term goal, you can see, oh, I said by May 2020, I'm going to increase my city council members' awareness of the barriers in accessing healthy and affordable foods. That one has that time orientation on there. So we did a little bit better job on that short-term goal. So when you write those goals, you want to make sure that they're smart, and that's something that I will be looking for when I'm grading your priorities and intervention plan is it a SMART goal? From there, as I said, you back up then from your goals to say, okay, so what strategy? So again, with your clients, you'd say, well, what would be the best therapeutic approach to address my client's mental health needs? In this case, it's what is our best community-based strategy that's going to help us achieve those goals. So this is where you want to go back to your readings in week 5, because those 2 readings really do a nice job of providing you with a lot of details about different kinds of community-based strategies. So we're going to take a look real quick at the Gamble and Wheel article, because they have this amazing table in their article where they outline a variety of community-based strategies. And so you could go to this table, for example, and you're looking across the top to see those are the strategies across the top. And then down the sides, you can see it says desired outcomes, systems for targeted change, primary constituency. And you're basically going to try and find one of these strategies that seems to fit your goal and your priority the best. So in my example with my zoning policies, I actually selected the organizing functional communities model. And then when I look at the desired outcome, it says action for social justice focused on advocacy and changing the behaviors and attitudes. So remember, I said I wanted to change the attitudes of my local city council members. I want them to have more buy-in on this idea of zoning policies. And then you can see the bottom row, it says systems targeted for change. And then under my organizing functional communities column, it says general public and government institutions. And so again, my target population right now for my immediate service is those city council members. So this model in particular supports what I would like to do with my community-based strategy. So you'll review those readings, identify your community-based strategy, and then you're going to come up with the details of that strategy. And again, this is because this becomes the sort of the bones for your future grant application, you're going to really be thinking through, okay, so within that model, organizing functional communities, what am I actually going to do? I have my goals, I have my ideas, I have my model. What are the actual steps that I'm going to take in order to achieve and reach my goals? So in this one, I'm going to implement a multi-part event that brings together city council members and community members for a community dialogue and awareness raising activities. So I'm going to organize an event. I'm going to have a community dialogue, and I'm going to do something that engages my city council members to raise their awareness. So I'm going to organize a community and city council members to plan the event. I'm going to hold a public dialogue with low socioeconomic neighborhoods to discuss access to affordable and healthy foods. I'm going to invite those city council members to hear people talking about how difficult it is for them to get healthy foods. I'm going to facilitate a community walk-in shop. So this is going to be a public event with media attention where city council members are going to walk with community members. They're going to have the dialogue first, and then they're going to walk with community members to the closest locations that have access to healthy food options. There is a strategy called poverty simulations that do something similar. So I want to simulate what it's like for somebody to be walking with groceries to, from a local food source. How much does it cost for them to get healthy foods? And then how do they carry those foods within, public transportation or walk back to their neighborhoods with those foods? And I want the city council members to experience that with their constituents. And then after, we would have a debrief dialogue where city council members can discuss their experience. They can process that experience and ask more questions of the community members. Again, the idea is to raise the awareness of my city council members and increase sort of their buy-in for the need to address this issue of access to healthy foods. So, something to keep in mind as you're coming up with your intervention plans is your funder for this project is called the Fund for a Just Society. They're only interested in projects that promote systemic change. And so, on their website, and again, I'll show you some of this a little bit later in the semester, but they provide examples of what's a systemic change versus charity. So, for example, charity is donating food to a food pantry. The systemic change is raising minimum wages so that people can actually afford food. So, do you see how one is charity, donating to a food pantry, but we're not changing the source of the problem when we just donate to food pantries. We need to look at making sure people have enough of their own income to afford food in the first place. So you'll want to make sure that with your project, you're not just doing these charity ideas, but that you're really doing something related to systemic change. There are additional items on the worksheet that I'm not covering in this presentation, but you should be able to figure it out. One is the timeline. What is your timeline? And part of this is to make sure it's a SMART intervention plan. And that's going to be a requirement in your funding application is what is your timeline for implementing your intervention? What is your justification? And so you're going to need to have a little bit of literature that supports your intervention idea. And then how are you going to mobilize people to get on board with your idea? So those are going to be additional items in the worksheet that you'll have to fill out. So from there, after you do that priorities and intervention plan, then you're going to be really looking at, okay, I need to turn this plan into an actual funding proposal. So you're going to be reviewing your funding proposal, and then you're going to be creating an outline of all the required elements of that funding proposal and how you're going to respond to those elements. And then again, if we have time, you can trade your outline with another peer group, but I'm going to just monitor that, make sure that we still have enough time for you and your partner to just start working on your final proposal and then that oral pitch. Now, before I end, I just want to back up real quick to that in-depth needs assessment. Remember, I was saying we are simulating that we've done the in-depth needs assessment and that this group already identified priority areas of housing, behavioral health, and nutrition. When you read that report, you're going to see these charts. They come up with goals and objectives for those areas. This is a little bit different than the goals and objectives you're going to be coming up with because these are still pretty big and pretty broad. But you can certainly look at these goals and objectives and kind of hone in on them and pull from these areas to help support yours. So if we take a look at that nutrition, objective 1.3 is one that I kind of honed in on. See how it says improve access and availability of nutrition and physical activity opportunities. So I honed in on that access and availability of nutrition. And then I came up with my own ideas from there. So you can use this to help inform what you do, although you're not going to be doing the exact same things because, again, these are still a little bit broad. I want you to get more specific from there. So with that, that concludes the presentation. I am open to meeting with you and your partner so that if you guys want to run your ideas by me, we can do that. But when I grade that worksheet, the priorities and intervention plan worksheet, that's where I'm going to really be able to tell if you and your partner are on track. So you can expect a fair amount of feedback from me on that worksheet, so that you can improve your chances of getting funded. So best of luck, and be sure you get going on that worksheet with your partner and let me know if you have any questions.